Yikes. That was rough. Guys, I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't tell. I'm not Jonathan Macri. John is probably currently several beverages in at the KFS live watch party. Today we have no J Mac, we have no G Mac, but we do got XJ. That's me. We got DJ right over there. Despite the rough loss, I'm super excited to be on here with DJ, aka Ace Zulo, on Twitter after this game, because for those who don't know, DJ is a super talented film analyst who is also the newest member of our KFS faculty family. DJ, I'm so glad you're here because, again, despite the really rough, kind of mostly the fourth quarter and rough ending, there's so much to break down. And I think for at least part of the game, we watched kind of a technical strategic game. And if anyone can help break that down, it's you. But first, how are we feeling about what we just saw? Because I think we're going to get a lot of an expression of emotions from our viewers and in the chat, and for good reason. Mm-hmm. So before we really get into the nitty gritty of breaking down schemes and player performances, like, just what's your instant reaction to what we just saw?
Yeah, you mentioned the emotion, and I think part of where that's coming from is that we saw our star player, number 30, sort of teeter on the verge of losing it. And it was worrisome there for a little bit, whether or not he was going to go completely off the rails. And it kind of felt like some of the dark days of last season, but he managed to at least get his composure to the point where he finished the game without any unnecessary actions that was going to get him into some sort of trouble, which I thought was a victory in and of itself. And we'll get into some of the strategic things and some of the schematic things, but as is accustomed to this team, they played really hard. I thought their first half was awesome. I thought in the second quarter specifically, their pace was amazing. They're led by Josh Hart. And I thought this team did everything they could have done to stay in this game. And then in the end, they just didn't have the shot making. And when you're going up against Kawhi Leonard, Paul George combining for 60 points, it's a tough hill to climb. And we're just seeing the byproduct of not having Jalen Brunson available, because there are so many moments this season where there's just nothing happening for this team offensively, where Brunson will go off and he'll just, get an ISO bucket for you when you need one. And they don't have that guy, especially with the Julius not playing at his best right now, to say the least. So I thought it was a matter of this team continuing their effort, which is commendable and something we need to celebrate. But in the end, and I tweeted this this morning or the other day, they can will themselves doing some of the things on a basketball court that can keep them in ball games, but they just can't will themselves to getting the ball into the basket. And I think that was where this game ended for them.
So totally agree with all of that. I think it's interesting because we saw a really sluggish Knicks team early in the first. I think they had 6 points in the first 8 minutes. It was some kind of insane, horrible scoring in the first quarter.
It was 14-4 Clippers with 6:09 remaining in the first. There you go.
Absolutely insane. And they kind of had to fight their way into the game. For a period, we saw, them just trying to claw back in and struggle and scratch and claw on the defensive end. And they did a great job. They fought back into the game. Then we saw a really physical game, a defensive struggle until the offenses caught up later. On the Knicks end, like you said, kind of starting with that second unit coming in transition, Josh Hart pushing the pace. We saw a lot of good stuff from Hartenstein, Obi. We'll talk a lot about that later. But then we just saw the Clippers' strength. Their top dogs. Their top dogs are.
Yeah, man. They're good, man. They're healthy. They're healthy and good.
Oh man, Kawhi Leonard is. I don't think you could stop that guy.
Not right now. He had an alley-oop during the game where it was off 2 feet and his head was near the rim. He had the full extension. I mean, he looks, and it's, if you're an NBA fan, it's great to have Kawhi Leonard healthy, but for the Knicks, he's just a matchup that is almost impossible for them to contend with. One of the, as good as they are defensively, the Knicks at times, not having that really long wing defender can come into haunt them. And against a Clipper team that, you're going to put a lot of guys in the mid post in ISO and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard that are 6'7" up. It's just a tough matchup. And Quentin Grimes, he'll do his best. And RJ, for the most part, I think, tries his best, but it's a tough matchup, really hard.
Just a tough matchup for the Knicks, these two wings. And that's why really the Clips can compete with anyone, no matter what the records say, because nobody has two wing stoppers that can shut those two guys down. The Knicks especially don't. We don't have the size on the wings. Like you said, Grimes and RJ kind of just aren't big enough, aren't long enough, aren't strong enough to either handle both of those guys. But I don't think anyone does. And we talked about Kawhi, like, so I pride myself on being kind of like a basketball robot. Like, I'm just this AI who cares about the data and the numbers, pro tanking when it's rational, blah, blah, blah. But kind of analogous to that is how we see Kawhi on the court. Like, Kawhi is just a robot, and he just dissected the Knicks in the second half, especially in that third quarter from all three levels. Like we said, they don't have the wing stoppers to do much about it. He looked explosive. But then when we also see PG playing how he was, asserting himself physically, hitting shots. Again, we'll talk about some of the schematics later, but I just don't think there was a ton we could do. And the Knicks were really, in essence, as you touched on, DJ, really without their top two players, because they were totally without JB, obviously. Please get well soon. And they were essentially without Randle, because this wasn't the Randle we've become accustomed to expecting all season. This wasn't all-star Randle, potentially all NBA Randle. This was kind of last year's Randle, and I hope he gets his things together. This is kind of just my takeaway is sort of a transition into highlighting players. So we'll on that Randle note, we're kind of talk about that. I just thought Randle was exhausted. I thought he had no legs. He was short on every shot. I thought he was fighting as much as he could down low, but didn't have the requisite elevation and strength to beat these other elite athletes. I thought there was that one moment in third quarter, I wrote this down, when Randle got the ball down low. He's basically wide open with Plumlee trying to recover to him. And he pump faked instead of just going straight up and attacking. And then he kind of like meandered down there and then tried to kick the ball out to the corner. I think it ended up being a turnover. I don't remember what happened on the possession, but honestly, that was just like symbolic of just an inability to muster the strength and the energy to do what he's been doing all season. And I just hate that he made those comments about load management. I think that he's sort of become the pseudo anti-load management poster boy now, and he's sort of boxed himself into having to play every game. I think he needs a break. In general, I generally believe in load management to an extent, and we don't even have to get into that philosophical discussion, but I just think he's exhausted in addition to not playing well. And beyond that, I think his not playing well affects his mental health. And then we see him frustrated with the lack of calls. Definitely there was a lack of calls. That was absolutely valid. But his frustration cost them points, was damaging to his overall psyche. At one point, the entire coaching staff and the players are all focused on calming him down instead of what's going on in the game. And it's just not great for anyone. So, and as Alan Hahn talked about during the on the call, the momentum completely shifted at the end of that third quarter, and it started with that foul and then flagrant on Randle, and they just got smoked in the fourth. So yeah, that was kind of my big takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The Clippers got 3 points out of that, including the technical foul. So they went up going to the fourth, and Randle at that point was on the bench. Clippers went on a little bit of a run to extend the lead, but I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of his legs not being there. That is going to affect you not only down low, but also your shot. And, it's one of those things where, as I think about it, can that Boston game have such an impact on this team, or on Randle specifically? Because quickly really turned things around and played really well. And we'll talk about how good he was this game. I thought that there are at times where he was as good as anyone on the floor. And I just think that for Randle, it's so stark, the difference between Boston and what we've seen the last couple of games. But, there's certainly something going on there. And this could be just a product of him just, not an elite shooter, just having a few games where the shot isn't falling. But I remember that play in the third quarter where he pump faked, and maybe that's a situation where you're not confident that if you go up strong and into the chest of Plumlee that you're going to get the call. I know he did have he had 8 free throws. So, that's a solid number, but I do think there was such physicality happening. And I think Tyronn Lue had that going into this game, that they were going to be physical with Randle, and they have the guys that could do it. And, Morris is more than willing to throw his body around, and certainly him and Julius got into it on a few occasions. But, I think that played a factor in that. And then the other thing is, Brunson has assisted Randle on 116 plays this year. That is a lot of open shots that Randle is just not getting when Jalen Brunson is not on the floor.
Yeah.
And then everything else is just tougher. RJ is not assisting on that level. Quickly is just not the gravitational pull that Brunson is. So when you're forced to sort of, and you're already an ISO heavy player, to elevate that with no Jalen Brunson, that has to have an impact. And as I'm processing it, maybe that's more of where the fatigue is coming into than playing a lot of minutes against Boston. When Brunson is not there, his load, what the Knicks need from him is increased, and everything is just a little bit tougher.
I think that's an incredible point, just because I think that they're missing Brunson for sure from an on-court, play style, spacing on the court, taking the load off of Randle. All of that stuff matters. But to me, JB's like all NBA potential case comes down to just his intangibles, the intangible impact that he has on the court. And it's weird coming from me, the data guy, but at the same time, like, I don't think we see some of these Randle blow-ups when JB's out there. I think he's a calming force. Again, we talk about it all the time. If he needs to, he can make one of his shifty moves, get down low, and get a bucket when they need him to. But also, like, guys just seem more confident when he's out there. And I just think even when he's not playing, but just the fact that he's coming back in, I think there's some intangible things that are going on with Brunson being off. And I think we really need him to get back. You did mention quickly, I think despite the loss again, there's a ton of really good things to talk about and a lot of good takeaways. To me, namely everybody on the bench and Emmanuel Quickley. I thought the bench played excellent. Quickley played excellent. Let's start wherever you want to. Who do you want to talk about?
Well, I thought, for sure, Quickley, but I thought Obi had a nice game, and he was 0 for 4 from 3. But even with that said, I thought his ability to get in transition was certainly impactful. And it kind of reminded me of the Obi of last season, where he was such an impact, getting leaking out when he, on a timed situation and getting out in transition. And then just having the guys that can get him the ball. I mean, that's been such a key in terms of Josh Hart. His sort of camaraderie with Obi has been apparent almost since the moment he put on a Knick uniform. So just to see Obi get in there and finish in the paint, huge for this team. And, he again, I mentioned the 0 for 4. The 3-point shooting is a low-key concern. I mean, we're going on a decent stretch where Obi's 3-point shot has not been there. But if he can sort of become the guy that he was at times his rookie season, and then most of last year in terms of being a dynamic finisher in transition, that'll go a long way in terms of giving this second unit the thing that really makes them good. And that is that pace that they have. And even when Brunson comes back, this second unit has some features that really separates themselves from from their starters. And I think that's sort of, and obviously they're very talented, but when you put those two things together, you can have a second unit that can really sort of change the game. And this team can really move fast. They push the pace a lot against the Kings, off live rebounds, off makes. And that's led a lot by Quickley, Hart, and Toppin. I think those three guys, and RJ for a lot of those, for a lot of ways I struggle with, but his ability to generate transition opportunities off his rebounds is certainly key. So I think Obi getting out in transition is a big thing. And I thought he really showed maybe some signs that he can be sort of turning over a new leaf in terms of like how well he's going to play, because the 3-point shot may or may not be there, but he certainly can be a finisher in the paint and get out and just be an impact as a transition opportunity guy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of that. You hit the nail on the head with pace. As far as Obi, right? Like, I think Obi is the biggest player that I've ever seen with regard to like his play goes and comes with his confidence. And you can tell he's confident when he dribbles, when he's willing to attack off the dribble, even like on a closeout. That one play that he did where I think Hartenstein got the rebound, threw it out to Obi. He pump faked. I think it was on Paul George, dribbled around him, floated kind of to his left and hit that like floating layup.
Lefty finish. Yeah.
Lefty finish floating on his left side. Like, if you see Obi make a play like that, he's got it going, because it's just all about confidence. And I think the biggest thing for him to work on, of course, he needs to get his 3-point shot more stable. Like you said, we've seen kind of a sustained downturn in his shooting. I don't know what number of games, maybe the last 20 games, maybe 25. It's been a while, but he hasn't shot well. But his biggest improvement to me is just getting his handle a lot better, because when he can dribble, when he feels like he can pump fake and attack as opposed to pump fake and just make a pass or just do dribble handoffs, it opens up the whole floor for him. It opens up his entire game. I love that play. I loved there was a couple of other plays that he made, and then I think the Clippers just forgot the scouting report. Like when Obi is closing out on a 3-point shooter, he's not coming back. He's going to keep going. He's going to the rim on the other end. You might want to put somebody back there for him. You know, he had one of those like diving, those classic diving Obi closeouts on a shooter, and then he just kept going to the rim. Hart threw him that pass, and he finished it on that end. So that was a huge positive for me coming out of this game. Another one, kind of low key, is Isaiah Hartenstein. I think he played really well, and I don't know if it was seeing the Clippers, and the Knicks decided to showcase the old Clipper Isaiah Hartenstein, but they actually ran a ton of offense through him at the at the top of the key. There were several buckets where Hartenstein kind of had the ball at the top. Guys were running curls around him, and he was just throwing really solid passes like he is able to do. And guys were finishing in the lane. I think we saw it like 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times. McBride got fouled once off of a Hartenstein pass. Quickly ran a curl around him and scored one time. So I thought we saw a ton of Hartenstein orchestration, and I was really excited about that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I guess with Jalen Brunson not being there, you have to diversify your offense. And he had 3 assists, as you alluded to, in 19 minutes, which was sort of in line with how he performed with the Clippers through a lot of that season last year. And, you know, he had 3 offensive rebounds. He's just been solid for a while now. And it's seemingly after that play, that stop against Donovan Mitchell in New York, in that game where the game went down to the wire and he had the biggest stop of the game. And since from that moment on, he has just been worth every penny and then some for this Knicks team that signed him in the offseason. And yeah, he's been really solid. And, you know, Mitch hasn't been great the last couple of games. So, you know, that's been a little bit of a frustration, especially coming from a guy, you know, me, who really appreciates him and really tries to promote how good Mitch has been, but he has not been that strong the last couple of games. Though he did have that one moment, which we'll get to in the moments of the game, I thought, where he really kind of showed out a little bit. But yeah, Hartenstein's been great. And I think without Brunson, you have to, as I mentioned, do a little bit, maybe more of that is in the cards, that Brunson is going to be out for a few more games, because, you know, there's just not a lot of shot making on the individual level, isolation beyond Julius right now. Quickly, it can do it some, RJ a little bit, but that's pretty much it. There was a lot of there was more moments where Josh Hart had to make a play with the shot clock running down than I was comfortable with. He made one in the fourth quarter, a little pull up midi turnaround from the paint area. But there was another play where he kind of pump faked and didn't end up getting a good shot at the rim. He's not a guy you want with the ball closing down on a shot clock. So the Knicks really do need to sort of manufacture points without Brunson, but we're just seeing how impactful JB really is to this team. I mean, if this isn't going to shine a light on how important he is in terms of his value to this roster, then I don't know what is, because their offense has really sort of tanked a little bit since he's been out.
Absolutely. And you point to those instances where Hart kind of had the ball late and needed to create something. Like you said, he hit that turnaround midi that one time, but it's like, we don't want to see Hart in too many situations.
No, he's been awesome for the Knicks, but not his forte.
No, that's not his strength. And we want to see him pushing the pace. You know, Hart is an absolute menace for the ball. Like, unbelievable how he just tracks the ball no matter where it goes. I don't know if that's something you can teach, or it's really strange, but you don't see players like him at his size do that at all.
No, he's got a little bit of that Dennis Rodman ability to sort of track the ball as it's in the air. And he's not like the most athletic guy, but he's super quick in short spurts. So he can get to that spot, sort of be aware where the ball is going to carry him off. And I know Mike Brown's, you know, after that Kings game was talking about how they never got a body on him, but I just feel like he's just not in the same spot ever. He's always moving. He's always shifting. So I imagine, like, you know, he's been a great offensive rebounder literally since the moment he became an NBA player. So I just think he makes it very tough, his movement and his ability to sort of understand where the ball is going to come. And we know that, you know, Dennis Rodman was famous for that. So there's something there that's beyond just effort and beyond just athleticism. He has a certain awareness of where that rebound is going to be, which puts him in position to sort of gain those offensive rebounds.
And you say that Mike Brown was saying, like, we're not getting a body on Hart. That's just one of those moments where it's like, coach, you go try to do it.
Yeah, right.
Because this guy is everywhere. He's constantly moving.
Mhm.
He's kind of unpredictable. He's just shifty somehow. And yeah, he just knows where the ball's going to go. Like it's really amazing to watch. And his impact was completely felt on this game. I just thought the best part of this game was the minutes with Hart, Obi, Hartenstein. I think IQ was out there or RJ. I'm not sure which one, but those minutes were great and just really were the highlight to me. You touched on Mitch. I mean, I think we should at least touch on both Mitch and RJ. Start where you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll go with RJ. It's a moment. These are games that you need him to sort of elevate to a point where you can count on him to give you that 25 to 30 in a semi-efficient way. And he did it in the Boston game where he scored 29, and it wasn't the most amazing game performed, but you just need to grind out points sometimes. And it seemed like in the third quarter, and I noted it, that things were just turning for him. And I thought, he played 12 minutes and change in the first half. And clearly it was a message from the head coach. Like, listen, you are not defending, you're not making shots, so you're not going to play. And it was an extended absence in the first half. So he comes out in the third and things are just like working for him. He's getting out in transition. He had a pass that quickly for a three. He had that 3-pointer from the top of the key. He had a couple of finishes. Things were just sort of turning for him, it seemed. And then it kind of lapsed and then it was over and he's going to finish the game. I'm pulling up his stats now. 5 of 12, 11 points in a game where you're going up against two of the best wings in the NBA. I don't need RJ to match them. It's just too much to ask, but he's played well against the Clippers in the past and he's played well against these two wings in the past. And it's just frustrating that he wasn't up to the task. And for this team to sort of maintain their positioning in the playoffs right now.
Yeah. Good point.
He's huge. I mean, it is what it is. So I get where he is in his career. We're not writing the epitaph at all. He's got many, many more levels to go as a player. But right now where this team is, he needs to be accountable and he needs to sort of make this kind of put a stamp on the season, which has been up and down to say the least for him, right? For RJ Barrett.
Yeah. Up and down season, just like another up and down game. I just think to weather the not having JB storm, we're just going to need more out of RJ. I don't think he can force it to happen, but I think where he can force it to happen is on defense. And and that was my main takeaway from the first half to the second half. The defensive effort and ability was vastly different.
I agree.
In the first half, we had a bunch of like weak closeouts by RJ. Morris hit one on a weak closeout. We had some like that one play where it was like a really lazy pass by RJ to Randle and Kawhi just took it and just dunked it. It was just, that
was rough because it was like RJ kind of dribbling right on the right side, got trapped. He doesn't have the dexterity or handle to sort of beat that. So he's at that point, he's kind of stuck. And then he compounds it by throwing, as you mentioned, that lazy pass. And that was like actually the first moment where we saw the Julius Randle frustration. Alan Hahn even noted it on the broadcast.
Right.
So, it certainly sort of steamrolled for Julius as the game progressed. But that was the first moment where you saw that, Julius mentally was a little edgy, to say the least.
Totally. And that, I think that was a trigger. I think that tends to be a trigger for Julius his teammates' mistakes.
Yeah. No,
it's kind of interesting, but even besides that, in the second half, I thought RJ was so much better, and I think you make a great point. Clearly there was a message sent, like, if you're not going to put in this effort on the defensive end, you're not going to play. And he came out much better, locking in. It's going to be a tough matchup no matter what. You're playing against PG. You're going to give up buckets. It's going to happen. A couple of times, PG flipped his hips and abused them and got to the rim. But a few other times he played good defense. And then he started attacking the rim, getting downhill, was in a lot more control, was a lot more stable, able to kind of plant and stop short. I want him to get lessons from JB on slowing down when you start getting into the paint and just
that deceleration.
The deceleration, things just open up. And RJ did a lot of that in the second half when he wasn't able to get all the way to the rim. RJ
that's a great
tends
point.
to be like either I get all the way to the rim or it's not going to work. And he's starting to incorporate that deceleration into his game.
Yeah, you're 100%. I mean, there are certain guys, Lucas, obviously arguably the best in the league at it in terms of like changing speeds, and then as you get to the rim, sort of decelerating, and then the defense is completely thrown off. Julius has shown that a few times, but Brunson is an absolute master at it, and quickly has really taken some of those little tricks of the trade. And as you mentioned, RJ, I think his first step is underrated, and once he's getting downhill, there really isn't a lot you can do with him if he gets his shoulders in front of you. But then when he has a rim protector coming over, when you change speeds on them, it's like if you're a hitter, a guy could be throwing 95, 95, 95, but you can time that. And eventually you're going to manage to time it and get a good swing on the ball.
Yep.
But changing of the speeds in baseball and basketball, these things matter. And for RJ, that's certainly something that as you mentioned, he needs to improve upon. But 4 or 5 to start the third, in terms of the field goals, I mean, it just seemed like I was really sort of hoping for that RJ moment in the second half where he was going to put the team on its back. Julius is not feeling it. JB's down, and it didn't come to fruition. So, a little frustrating for that.
A little frustrating for that. And just before we get to the Weiss and Rosenbloom personal injury report, you saying the fastball, and then not kind of incorporating that changeup or something to throw off the hitter just made me think of Russell Westbrook in this game.
Oh yeah,
Russell Westbrook was just out of control in transition, attacking, and missed like a few bunnies. And just I wish Westbrook played a lot more minutes in the second half.
I know he had a couple of finishes where he just slamming the ball off the backboard, and it's like
I do that sometimes. I'm like, Russ, you can't still be doing this.
It's right, and he's given quickly some fits because he's such a power guard at this point. But yeah, it was almost like let him get to the rim because it's not going to work out pretty for him when he gets there.
Totally. Justin, let's do the Weiss and Rosenbloom personal injury report. Presented as always by the law offices of Weiss and Rosenbloom, personal injury attorneys. Call Weiss and Rosenbloom today at 212-366-6100 or visit weissandrosenbloom.com for more information. No case is too big or too small. Personal attention to your matter is a priority. Consultations are free, and of course, they don't get paid unless you do. Once more, call 212-366-6100. Previous results do not guarantee future outcomes. If you think you might have a case, speak with a veteran attorney, not a rookie. And like we said, speaking of veterans, the Knicks sage veteran and leader Jalen Brunson was out today with a sore left foot. And, his impact was missed as sorely as his foot is. I think initially also Isaiah Hartenstein was listed as probable on the injury report, but thankfully he played. I don't think this would have been a great game for Sims. And I felt personally, just to my eye, Hartenstein was like one of the best players on the court for a lot of the game. So really glad that Hartenstein was able to tough it out and get some minutes despite getting injured in the last game.
Yeah. And I'm torn. I want JB back as soon as possible, but also want that foot completely healthy. But it's going to be a struggle without him. This is now a coaching thing as much as it is a player thing, because they need to figure out a way to manufacture some points here. And if that's incorporating Grimes as a movement shooter a little more, but without Jalen Brunson this is all hands on deck. And right now we just need him that foot healthy, because without him, this team is certainly diminished.
I'm very hopeful that there is just, there's just some optimistic part of this injury for Brunson, which is that he gets time to rest and recuperate and is not suffering from some of this exhaustion that I think Julius Randle is suffering from. So I'm hoping that, the foot gets back to 100%. And on top of that, the rest really helps him down the stretch run and into the playoffs. So that's really what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Glass half full, right?
Glass half full. Yeah. And let's segue into our moment of the game. Before we get right into the super chats. I mean, it was tough just because I think a lot of times the moments of the game happen late in the game, but late in the game was like the worst part of the game for the Knicks. I have a couple moments I'm looking at. I mean, one is the Obi Toppin a pump fake and attack floating left, to his left side and finishing off the glass. I really appreciated that one. Do you have a few that you want to nominate?
Sure. I mean, it felt big at the time, but that Julius 3 to cut the Clipper lead to 47-46 towards the end of the second quarter, it just felt like he had gotten his rhythm, not his rhythm, but he sort of got his mind right. And it seemed like he was finding his way a little bit. And obviously we know now it didn't it didn't suggest anything was going to be happening positively for him in the second half. And then the other one I thought was Mitch, and I mentioned I think he played great, but he did have 8 offensive rebounds, 2 of which came in one play where he sort of volleyballed the ball, second jumped, got a second offensive rebound on the same play, ended up putting the ball back in to make it 68-66.
Yeah,
I thought that was a really good play. So I think those two felt big at the time. And as you mentioned, not much in terms of the positivity as the game wound down, but those two felt big. And I thought, again, they were that Mitch play, especially high effort.
Mm-hmm.
So you commend that. And Tibbs continues to really generate a lot of effort from this ball club.
Yeah, I think we should go with those 3. I mean, I would want to highlight one of RJ's drives in the second half, but there's not a specific one that felt like a big moment necessarily, just that he was kind of getting it going. A potential other option is the one I said, like Obi, the closeout on the 3, and then Hart to Obi transition dunk.
But, yeah, I mean, quickly had a really nice end-to-end finish with the left hand to make it 73-72. He had a couple of those plays.
Quickly was really good in transition today.
Yeah, just grabbing, going, and even when he didn't generate the rebound, just getting that initial pass and just getting down court and really generated some nice looks. And that lefty finish was phenomenal. It was a Euro step leading to the lefty finish, and his finishing at the paint has been it's everything for him, because we all know the floater, which hasn't really been there in the last couple of games. And we know he's a great shooter, but to be able to finish at the basket with either hand, big for him. And I thought that play specifically was really big.
Totally right. And one thing is attacking closeouts quickly does amazingly at, but also Quentin Grimes does, which we haven't mentioned Quentin Grimes yet, but in that first quarter or in that first half, Grimes was excellent. Attacking closeouts, collapsing the paint, getting into the teeth of the defense and kicking it out or finishing himself. There was just a moment where, a stretch of like 3 or 4 minutes where I'm like, Grimes is like the best player on the court right now. He kind of went quieter as the game went on, but Grimes did have a really great impact.
He did. And by the way, didn't make a 3-pointer. So you talk about his ability to sort of impact the game without making a shot. Him and Quickly, we talked about how the game started off slowly. It was 16-6 or 14-4 Clippers was 609. From like that point forward, Quickly and Grimes were just quicker than anyone on the floor and seemed to generate a lot of good things for the Knicks. And Grimes multiple times beating closeouts, finishing, had a really nice and one play off a Josh Hart pass. I thought he played really well, and defensively he competes. It's just, 6'4" is 6'4" in the end. And when you're going up against a guy 6'8", 6'7", it's tough.
Yep.
I think Grimes is much more, his ability as a defender really is highlighted when he's against shiftier, smaller guards, but ones and twos, right. The Donovan Mitchells, he can do a little more to impact their game versus like Kawhi Leonard, because his size is a limitation. But I agree with you. I thought he played really well, and for him to play well without the 3-pointer falling it just highlights how well-rounded he is as a basketball player.
Absolutely. I totally agree with all that. But I think for the moment of the game, we'll probably go with the 3 that we mentioned off the top. Obi with the pump fake and attack to the basket, finishing with the left, Julius to hit the 3 to cut the lead, and Mitch multiple offensive rebounding effort. I think those are probably the top 3 moments. I can't wait to see what people have to say about this game. I'm just really curious what the super chats are going to be like. Let's segue over into it. DJ, let's do the thing we talked about before the game. We go back and forth reading the super chats. You want to start out with this one?
Don Cupaciti, great effort again. I totally get it if JB needs to rest out the rest of the road trip, but if he can go, let him go. I am of the belief with a healthy JB, we would have been riding 11-game win streak into today. And I think that I mentioned that speaks to what I'm dealing with in my head. Like, part of me wants him back as soon as possible, but also kind of need him healthy. And, I definitely think they would have gotten at least one of these last couple of games with a healthy Brunson, or at least for the whole game against the Kings. And I thought they would have had a good shot today. So yeah, man, they need him back, and they need him healthy. He's so important, because this isn't a really high level motion offense like the Warriors, where there's cutting and there's back cuts and there's a lot of screens, there's shooting off movement. This offense is, while you can certainly add some things like we talked about Hartenstein being more of a impact on the offensive end, these are you're sort of like changing things on the edges. The offense is the offense, and for it to work, you need guys to be able to make shots against good defenders in isolation situations. And Brunson is as good as it gets. So yeah, get him back healthy, but don't come back too soon.
You need guys who are going to be able to get into the teeth of the paint on their own, who are going to be able to create their own shot. Randle really wasn't able to most of this game. And if Randle can't do it well and Brunson's out, we're going to have a tough time. There's only so long I think that this team can rely on transition buckets, Hart pushing the pace, guys like Hartenstein running offense from kind of the pinch post area or the top of the key. Mm-hmm. So, I think Brunson is everything for this team. Dom, yeah, thanks so much for the generous contribution. I think that this is just the other side of the coin, right? Should JB, if he's at all ready to play at all, should we just throw him in there, or should we let him have a chance to rest? Yes, I totally agree. We would get a win or two more out of these last 3 games. Is that worth the trade-off for what it might cost you later in the season and potentially in the playoffs? It's really hard to say. These things can't be broken down to like a math equation, I think.
I agree. And then who's making the call, right? Is this coming from is this coming from Tibbs? Is it coming from, obviously there's going to be a collaboration, but yeah, this is kind of when you need to have a organizational philosophy in terms of when he's playing, because we know what the coach is going to think. And I'm not saying this as a criticism of Tom Thibodeau, but I think most coaches, they're going to want their guys playing if they're healthy. And I think there's something to be said about, kind of pushing the boundary in terms of keeping them out a little longer, because we already saw one re-injury. So we don't want a second one.
And speaking of the organizational philosophy, I think what we just saw was kind of these 2 opposing organizational philosophies with regard to playing time, because we see the Clippers as like the poster team for this like load management. We're saying Kawhi's gonna play 50 games this year. Like that's what we're just saying at the beginning, no matter whether he's healthy or not. Paul George is gonna get load managed. And the Knicks on the other end of the spectrum are like, hey, if these guys can walk, they're out there, and they're playing 35 to 38 minutes. So yeah, thanks so much, Dom. Appreciate the super chat as always. Hamdi M. Grimes has nice playmaking potential. Want to see more of that. # confident Obi. Hamdi on point. Like this is my 2 of my big takeaways from the game. Confident Obi is the Obi that we need. Grimes with his playmaking, like DJ said, didn't hit a 3 tonight, but still had a great impact on the game on both ends. Able to attack off of teams closing out to him hard, and he can get into the paint and he makes good decisions. He's either going to make a really nice dump down pass to a big like Mitch rolling to the paint, or he's going to spray it out and kind of start that process all over again with somebody else kind of pump faking and attacking closeout. So I really like Grimes' playmaking potential. I do want to see some of that unlocked a lot more. And yeah, confidence with Obi is everything. If he can work on his ball handling, I think his confidence will come with it, because he'll have an ability and a belief in himself to get to where he needs to on the court. And right now, I don't think he thinks that he can. And we also saw some good defense from Obi, I want to say as well. He did pretty solid on Kawhi, I think at the last possession of the first half, and didn't really get exploited not to my eye for most of the game. So.
Neither didn't seem to get exploited either to mine. And I think the Clippers are a decent matchup for him in the sense that you're not getting a ton of rim attacks by them especially when Russ is not playing. Yeah, it's a lot of mid range, a lot of shooting from the perimeter. So I think the thing that really I struggle with Obi is his ability to protect the paint when that's required. And I don't think that this team can really, the Clippers that is, expose that deficiency. I thought he was confident, and it was nice to see. And I don't know if he had a inkling that he was going to get extended minutes with Julius sort of, in his own head. True. Ended up only playing 13 and change. So it didn't really pan out. It felt like he played more than he did. And I don't know if it's because it just seemed like he was on the floor more and just doing things. And I think it was a product of how well he played and how much he was in all the action. You were
aware that he was on the court.
Right. Yeah. I didn't forget about him standing in the corner, sort of waiting for the pass to come his way. He had a really strong game, and hope he can continue to build off that.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Well, what do we got next? We got Dom again. All right. Dom again with any real concern on Randle's legs and mental short-term end of a back-to-back and long-term. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's a concern, and I guess I'll take the fatigue part of it. I don't know if that is the big driver here. Personally, I think we're dealing with a guy that made a ton of really tough looks throughout the season. His volume on 3-point shooting is obviously at a career high. He's made his some of the most, he's amongst the league leaders in 3-point makes this season, but he's not a great shooter. And guys that take a lot of threes that aren't great shooters, that take a lot of contested looks, are going to have games where things are not in line for him. So I think that's part of what's going on. I think he could be just going through a slump, but certainly the mental part of it can cause these things to snowball. And it almost did to the point where it was going to get ugly today. And luckily Johnny Bryan, who had that moment where he swore, he brought Randle over, looked him in the eye, not sure what he said, couldn't read the lips, but clearly calmed him down to the point where Randle was able to get to the bench, kind of resolve himself to getting back in the game. And then after a nice little rest, get back in, didn't play well, but I thought that Johnny Bryan's impact, his relationship with Julius was important there.
Totally. I totally agree with that. I think that's a good spot. And to Dom's comment, like, my main concern with Julius is the long term in terms of his mental. I don't want it to snowball and this to kind of build on itself in the wrong way. I want him to be able to take a step back and regroup and regather himself and get back into a good mental standing like he has been most of the season. I think this was kind of the biggest, I don't want to call it an outburst, but the biggest animated Julius that we've seen in terms of being frustrated with the refs, and for good reason. I think that Julius was getting a lot of fouls that weren't called. This was just a really physical game on both ends. It's hard for me to say it was really biased towards the Clippers, but I think there was just a lot that they were letting go, and it makes sense for Julius to get frustrated with that.
Well, let me ask you this though: does that worry you in terms of the playoffs? Because I would imagine this is going to be more like the playoffs than what we've seen throughout the year up to this point. So if Julius is struggling with that physicality and maybe the call is not going his way, or the call is just not happening in general, and the refs allowing these guys to bump him around a little bit.
Such a good point.
Kind of a red flag, right?
I think that this is going to be a strategy for teams. Can you get in Julius's head? Can you kind of be physical with him? I think Morris was doing it entirely intentional. Morris has a track record of this, being physical, kind of being underhanded about it, doing things that when he knows the refs are not looking, and that gets Julius frustrated. Like, it absolutely does. So,
do you notice how when Morris does it, he does it almost with a sly smile the whole time? And I think that's sort of what you're alluding to there, is that he knows exactly what he's doing.
He knows,
and even though he's had moments where he's lost his cool a little bit, I think he's in more control than he lets on. And
especially as he's gotten older, I think Morris is now just knows his role, and now he knows that's part of his role, and he knows that he needs to keep a check on himself, but also can he trigger the opponents? And a guy like Randle is going to be a target for teams with things like this. So I think it's a big concern.
I agree with you. And hopefully against the Lakers, he can turn that around.
Good to go, JP. Damn, Dom Cappuccini coming through. Thank you so much, Dom. Appreciate it. JB is such a difference to this team. I appreciate RJ, but this team needs another star for when JB and JR are out or off. Totally makes sense. Depending on which star, it could raise up this team to top 3 in the East. And I think, Dom, this is a lot towards Jonathan Macri's point recently, when he's been talking about kind of RJ is the big factor in how far this team's going to go, and could be the biggest swing factor on any team that is going to be in the playoffs. If RJ plays really well, is efficient, is attacking, is playing good defense, this Knicks team, I believe, and DJ, you may disagree with me, and that's all good. I think this team can make an Eastern Conference final. If RJ is going to play like he played today, I think this could be a first round out for this team. So there's a big swing in range in terms of how far they can go. And I think a lot of it is going to come down on RJ. Of course, moving forward long term, they are going to need another star. That is the plan. Mm-hmm. But this team right now, this season, this year, I think no matter how well Emmanuel quickly plays, a lot is going to come down onto RJ Barrett.
I agree with you. They need his creating, his ability to draw fouls, his ability to generate offense, and that second unit when Randle and Brunson are getting a rest, and RJ is leading that Hart quickly, Hartenstein top-end lineup, which I think at times look pretty good. So yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. I think he is, and Macri for sure. I think he is the biggest swing player on this roster right now. We had mentioned Obi. I think he's part of that on a smaller degree. I looked his 3-point percentage. We were talking about Obi Toppin earlier. Last 15 games, he's at 17% from three. And his overall 3-point shooting is down to under 33%. So it's been a while since he's connected on 3-pointers on a consistent basis. But yeah, I am in complete agreement. If RJ plays well, this team can get to an Eastern Conference final. I think that, the Milwaukee matchup, obviously, if they stick in that 4-5, is a doozy, but RJ is good enough, and he's shown it in the past. I mean, that's the thing. It's not like we're talking about a guy with all theoretical ideas. He has shown in the past, stops and starts, hasn't been consistent. I get that, but at almost 23 years old, we need him to be the guy that, not a superstar, but a really good player on a really good team, because I felt that was a ceiling for him. And if he turns into that guy, then yeah, I think this team can win a couple of rounds for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I think a ton comes down to RJ, and like you said, I think you made a great point, which is that we've seen it out of him. It's not like, that we're hoping for something to happen that's never happened. It's just got to happen, and it's got to happen more consistently. So totally agree.
Yep.
What else do we got?
MDM again. I don't know if I should be angry or disappointed. It's a good question, actually. Randle has to be a better leader. Kawhi is a beast. Yeah, I'm not angry personally. I am a bit disappointed in how the last couple of games have turned out for different reasons. And the Charlotte game is out of its own animal in a way. But yeah, Randle has to be a better leader. I think he's been a better leader throughout the season. And I think he deserves this moment if this is the moment. If this carries over and we get the Julius of last season more often as this team is battling for playoff positioning, then that's a problem. But if Julius has this moment and he gets himself out of it, I'm not going to critique him. I think that, every player or most players, they deserve a mulligan. And I feel like he's had so much positivity in terms of his leadership this season that I'm hoping that he can figure this out. And yeah, Kawhi, absolute beast, 38 points. As you mentioned, robotic in a lot of ways. Insane. But showed his athleticism on that transition dunk, and his ability to get over the top of defenders in the mid-range is almost unmatched at that spot. He's a phenomenal mid-range shooter, and part of the reason why you just can't quit this Clipper team when you look at it on the NBA as a whole, because when these two guys are playing great, I know the ancillary pieces may leave a little bit to be desired, but they are two guys good enough to carry this team pretty far. And
absolutely,
if, Kawhi's healthy, he's still a top 10 guy, maybe top 5 overall player in this league.
I think could be top 5. Just the fact that he's like a guy like KD, the kind of guy who can just get to a spot and there's just nothing you can do about it. It's like, is he going to miss or not? There's not many guys like that. Kawhi is one of those guys. And then on top of that, what he brings to the defensive end, like guys who do this scoring in the mid range and who can attack the basket and who are elite offensively, don't also can lock down your best player.
Yeah.
You don't see that.
And they have two guys that can do it at times.
And they have two guys who can both do it at times.
That's why this team has such a high ceiling. And I would not be excited to play them if they're healthy, for sure.
No, not excited at all for any team in the West. And to the Randle point, I think there was a lot of talk about how last year Randle is miscast as like the best player on the team, should be more of like a second or third best player. To me, that's definitely true, but I think he's more miscast as the primary leader on the team. I think he's a really strong ancillary leader, as he has been this year. I think there needs to be a primary leader with Randle, and we've seen that in JB. And I think there's a big difference. Like we talked about some of the intangibles. When JB is out, he has that leadership. He is that calming force. He is that guy that they're going to look to JB, and he's going to be just like super calm. Maybe he'll get mad at the rest for a second, but he composes himself and he's back at it.
And Randle, for you to say that
on that,
and you're the numbers guy, and you look at things in a very analytical way. For you to, and I think you're 100% right. For you to say there's something else going on there in terms of how JB is a calming influence, I think speaks to how true that statement really is. And I see it. I think most Knicks fans see it. I think it's a big deal, and they just need him back for his scoring, his all those other things he does on the court, but for his ability to calm things down, especially when things are going the other direction, when things are haywire. Absolutely massive.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better. Thanks so much, Hamdi. Appreciate that. Is it on me? I think it is.
Yes, it is, sir.
Juanon, what's up, man? How many games would the Knicks have won without Jalen Brunson? That's a tough question. We can start to try to think through that. How many texts would Randle have? I think that speaks to what we were just talking about. Really interesting. And is RJ Barrett feeling the frustrations voiced by Cam Reddish? Lots of questions after tonight. Oof. Yeah, these are really great questions. I kind of want DJ to start so I can take the pressure off myself to answer these.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I feel like this could be its own like show, just breaking down these
absolutely
queries. But how many games would the Knicks have won without? I mean, wow. I think we're talking 5 to 6 games decrease, which I don't know. You're the numbers guy. Does that put you all NBA level in terms of the value you bring to a team? I think that's probably around where I think that, there's so many games where in my mind, I'm picturing Brunson making a play in the fourth quarter where there just wasn't anything else going on, or drawing a charge, just making a play. And his shooting is such a gravitational force as a spot up shooter as well. There's just so many factors there. So obviously it would be much less. Hard to put a specific number on that.
Just to that question, I want to say, I think it's more. I think it's more, and it's so tough. Me, again, like we talked about, me being the analytical, data-driven person, it's super hard for me to talk about this, but I just think just his presence, just the leadership that he brings, I think he makes other guys play better, not just with his play, but also with his aura, with his vibe that he brings to the game. And so it's really hard to put a number on it. I think it could be around 8 or something like that. That would put him at an all NBA level. I think most of like the superstars in the league are above that 5 to 6 number, might be around the 8 to 10 number, something like that. And I think JB's up there.
So that means you're in the play-in contention, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So that's huge. So hugely valuable to this team. How many texts would Randle have? I mean, more, a lot more, because for all the reasons we've talked about. I mean, this is couldn't have been any more perfectly timed for that question. Thank you. And then the RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish thing, that's a tough one because RJ plays a lot of minutes, and I know I mentioned the fact that he had the extended absence in the first quarter, but then Tibbs went right back to him in the third quarter. So I don't think there's anything there yet. Now RJ may just view himself, and I don't know this, to be a guy that deserves 20 to 25 shots every night. He may, and that wouldn't necessarily shock me, but I think that Tibbs has really shown RJ in terms of the minutes and the usage to be a guy that he values. So I don't think this is a Cam Reddish situation at all.
Yeah, I agree with that on RJ. I don't think RJ's the guy. I mean, if anything, some of what Reddish said, I think more applies to like Obi in terms of the feeling of, if I have to make every shot that I take.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it more applies to Obi than I don't think RJ feels that pressure. I think RJ knows he's getting 30 plus minutes for the most part, sometimes into the 35-minute range. So I don't think that's coming from RJ. What is interesting, and not to put us on a tangent too much, but some of that was expressed by Cam as far as like, I got to make every shot. We've heard some of that from Obi Toppin in the past last year, saying that he felt a lot more comfortable when he knew he was going to get a bunch of minutes later in the season. And we also heard some of that from Matisse Thybulle actually recently after his trade, saying like feeling like he's playing in just like a sphere of like fear-based play where like, I got to make the right play. If I mess up, something's bad's going to happen. And I think it's tough. There are a lot of players who can't play well in those circumstances. There are a lot of guys who are just personally, individually, mentally strong, and they can thrive in those circumstances. I think like Jalen Brunson's a guy like that. There are some guys who just don't thrive in that situation. And to me, I think organizations and coaches need to adjust, their principles and their philosophy to really accommodate and get the best out of those guys. I don't think you could go so far, right? I don't think you could go the complete opposite end and just say, hey, we're just going to coddle you guys and do whatever you want. But at the same time, I think there needs to be some adjustments made. And I think that's something we're starting to hear about as far as the NBA, with guys not feeling like feeling like there's so much pressure on them, not just from the game perspective, but from the coaching and organizational perspective. So
great points. And, Tom Thibodeau on the Knicks side and Doc Rivers on the Sixers side, veteran coaches, they have their way. They are very tough in terms of, especially their role players. And I can imagine it being very challenging for a guy that's only going to get a few shots up in a game. Now, the other end of that is, listen, if you have a team vying for the Sixers, vying for a championship, you're going to have players that are going to get only a handful of shots and are going to have short leashes. That's sort of the product of a great team. And can Doc sort of on the Sixers side change the way he communicates? Maybe it's a communication thing. Maybe it's when Embiid isn't playing, you allow the leash to be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Just sort of giving these guys a little more flexibility, as you allude to, can maybe go a long way. But to me, both these teams have aspirations to do some damage in the playoffs. So I have a little less sympathy for players in that way, but also understanding how tough it could be.
Yeah, totally fair. Thanks so much, Juanon. You should help produce some of our shows sometimes with these questions.
Who's this? I
think that's you, DJ. Who is this guy?
Andrew Claudio. It sounds familiar. I don't know. Hey guys, one TLT.
First time, long time.
First time. Thank you. I appreciate it.
One TLT, baby.
First time, long time. Want to officially pour one out for Robert Cross. The 53 wins dream is mathematically dead. Sad face. Get well soon, JB. Well, there it is. Robert Cross has been on the 53 win bandwagon for a while now, and it seemed for a stretch during that 9-game win streak that he was going to be proven correct. But alas, the dream is over. If they can get into that high 40s and play well going into the playoffs, I think we'll all feel good about this team. But low 50s, the dream is over. I hope Andrew and all the guys and gals are having a good time wherever they're having a good time. Right now. But the dream is over for 53 wins.
I had started calling him the prophet, Robert Cross, for the hashtag 53 wins. Maybe next year, though. We'll see, depending on what they do in the offseason. But Andrew Claudio. So, I hope you guys are having a great time, like DJ said. Hope that you didn't let the fourth quarter get you down too much. We're having a blast on the post game. So thanks for the super, Andrew. Busy. What up, Busy? Knicks this season now 0-1 when John sits in the corner of the bar and not have fun. Seriously though, shout out to the KFS for hosting a great watch party. I'm so glad to hear it was great.
We need some photos, or at least one of John in the corner of the bar.
Stories, especially if John's in the corner of the bar. Definitely need photos of that.
I can see him just like, depressively talking to like the bartender, just like, oh, we had so much promise. And then JB's foot, and it was going so well. And I was going on these post games, and it was like everyone was beaming, and it was happy go lucky. And now I have to go on and talk about a team with, Brunson being out indefinitely and Randle losing his head again. I could see it. So I want some visual proof though. Need a photo. Need something.
Totally. We need videos, visuals. I was gonna say I'm glad that before the game I was thinking like I'm glad that we're doing the front end of this back to back and John's doing the back end of the back to back. But it didn't work out. Maybe it'll be even worse tomorrow. Hopefully not. But glad the KFS watch party was great. That's really good to hear.
All right, Soggy Bun 65. JB truly is the X factor. We agree there. Randle has shown he will revert to bad habits without JB's calming style of play. There you go, XJ. Exactly what you were saying. And RJ ain't it. Even the eye test. He just looks slow and prodding with a lot of mental lapses. No explosiveness. So, we talked about ad nauseum, I feel like, what JB brings to the roster in terms of his calming influence. We both agree with you there. It's a big factor. And then in terms of RJ ain't it, I guess it depends what it is, because if you think it is a guy you're running your offense through for 20 pick and rolls a game, he's not that guy, which to me perfectly fine, because if he is your third option, he's a good player on a really good team, I think that is still in the cards for him. I don't see any reason why it isn't. He's not the most explosive player, and the fact that he moves in a methodical, prodding way, I think can be that can go both ways, because I think at times he can be really patient and get to his spots and uses his strength to kind of work his way in, and he doesn't explode to the rim as much as he can sort of find an angle and get his shoulders in front of a defender and figure out a way to finish. So I think that can play a part, but when you don't have high end athleticism, it will cap you in terms of how dominant you can be when you're not a great shooter. So that is something that he has to contend with. And I think it's been a battle for him, at least since his Duke year, where, he gets into the paint and that lack of high end athleticism can hurt him a little bit. But, as you had mentioned, he is such a important factor for this team in terms of where they can go. They're a good team with him playing well sporadically. So you just think about where they can go when Brunson's healthy. You get Randle sorted out. We see how well Quickly is playing. We saw the things that Grimes can do, the Josh Hart impact. Obi may be playing better. Hartenstein, Mitch has been really good through most of the year. So this team is deep and good, and it can even go a level higher with RJ figuring out his shooting deficiencies and just getting himself back in order in a consistent way.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. And I think that, to me, if I remember correctly, that was the big question about him coming out of Duke, is the fact that he lacks that high end explosiveness and athleticism.
Yeah.
And how is that going to translate? And I think it could, RJ, how old is RJ now? 23? Is he?
I think he might be 23 or just late 20s.
Just turned. Yeah. He has time to improve. He definitely has time to improve. He's not at his peak or his prime yet. I think the slow and plodding style from RJ can be an advantage. I mean, we see it be an advantage for Luka, a guy like Luka Doncic, not on the defensive end, but on the offensive end. If you can play your game, not be sped up, take your time. We talk about Kawhi being like a robot. Kawhi's going to do what he wants. You're not going to force him to do something he doesn't want to do. And if RJ can kind of take control and be like, I'm going to be slow and plodding, but I'm going to get to my spots. And I'm going to pump fake, and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to spin, and I'm going to finish with some finesse. I think that doesn't have to be like the nail in the coffin for his ceiling.
I agree with you.
Yeah, that's some of what I think on that.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie that point up, I think the thing that, and we're not comparing him to Luka. You make a great point in terms of his lack of explosiveness, but the things that RJ lacks that Luka has, and a lot of these finishers in the paint that aren't high-end athletes, is that Luka has got amazing touch. And then we talked about earlier in the show that deceleration ability, that changing of speeds. RJ hasn't mastered that yet. So the touch thing, there's a lot of debate whether or not you can add that in or you can improve on that. I think he's improved on that subtly, but he's never going to be a high touch player or an elite touch finisher. And obviously the shooting is not great, but can he figure out a way to use his strength, then use that deceleration, changing of the speeds in the paint? Certainly can go a long way.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. We don't see players come into the league and have really bad touch and suddenly become like Steph Curry, with finger rolls from outside of the paint kind of thing. But at the same time, he can improve on it, and I think he has. I think we've seen some of his bag increase in terms of some of his finger rolls look a lot nicer than they used to when he was earlier in his career, when he would just like bang them off the backboard. His touch has improved. And so I think we will continue to see strides from RJ. I think we just need to see more consistency. And like you said, your point, when Sagi says RJ ain't it depends on what you want it to be or what you mean it to be. I think RJ can be a really valuable contributor to a high level team that's going to compete deep into the playoffs. Just depends on what role he's going to be in and how consistent he is. So we'll thanks so much, Sagi. Appreciate the generosity. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate that.
Hamdi M, what's up, man? Thanks again. Thanks so much for another one. DJ/XJ, you guys rock. I appreciate that, Hamdi.
Thank you,
man. So why not rest Randle a game? Is it Tibbs or Randle or both? Hart keeps showing toughness. Yeah, I mean, DJ talked about this earlier. It's kind of like you have to have an organizational philosophy. And then, of course, Tibbs and Randle and Randle's camp and just everyone around the organization is going to have a say in these kinds of things. It's not going to be any one individual. I don't think Tibbs is just making the decision in a vacuum, just like, hey, you're playing every game. I think that Randle wants to play. If I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on, I take this with a grain of salt. I don't know if there's something about like not wanting kind of Obi to start and get a bunch of minutes and play really well. I know we've seen in the past when Obi plays really well, that affects Julius's mental. It could be some of that, but that could just be complete speculation. It is complete speculation. But yeah, I think Randle wants to play. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that Randle wants to play every game. He expressed his comments about being kind of against load management. He puts a ton into his body. Like, the guy works insanely hard. No one can take that away from him. So I think he wants to play, and he's matched up with a coach who wants to play his guys every minute. It's just like a marriage that results in a guy playing near 82 games in a season, which we don't see very often anymore. So it's just tough. Yeah. I don't know what you think about that, DJ.
Yeah, I agree. Then plays a style at 6'9", 250 that is bruising, and especially in a game like today, where he's not only delivering the blows, but he's receiving them. So it kind of enhances the sort of physicality that Randle exudes in a game on both sides, whether it's from the opponent or from him. He plays a very physical style, and it's something where it seems like the organization has really allowed the head coach to make these decisions. And if Randle and Tibbs are in lockstep, and I don't have any reason to believe they are not, I don't see, if Randle is physically healthy, that he won't be playing. And then lastly on that, Josh Hart, yeah, his toughness is unbelievable. I mean, you talked about his ability to generate offensive rebounds and just where his motor just doesn't stop.
Insane.
And
yeah.
It's incredible. It's something that really you just assume he's going to like take a possession off and just like get a breather, and it never happens. And he gets the benefit of not being in, he's not a guy that's required to score a lot on the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe he can kind of make his muster on that side in terms of his energy, offensive rebounding, and pushing it in transition. But his toughness is great, but he's also very skilled. He's skilled in unique ways, right? His finishing, his passing ability, and his ability to shoot from the corner, I think, is an overall positive when he just releases the ball. There are times where he just won't take the shot, which is frustrating. He just needs to shoot it, and it's something that has gotten better since his Blazer run, but not where I think it needs to be. But his toughness is incredible, and he shows it every game.
Incredibly tough, and I think it's great that Hamdi said that. Mensa always compares Hart to a third down running back, a guy like a Brandon Jacobs. He's going to come in.
Man,
you're not going to stop him from getting the first down.
No,
he's just, his motor and toughness is ridiculous. And I'm really glad that you mentioned, DJ, like, he's also super skilled. Like, it doesn't look pretty. It's not like, the pirouettes that JB is doing, but he has a ton of skill. And we saw some of that fadeaway turnaround midi that we saw from Josh Hart. We don't see it too much, but they don't ask him to do that stuff. We don't want to have to see too much of that, but he's capable. He's capable when he has confidence. And he's always confident in transition, pushing the ball, pushing the pace, getting to the rim. It might not look pretty, but he's very strong, very skilled, and very tough. So
100% agree on that.
What else do we got? Kevin Nolan with just the $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for the support and the contribution.
And we got Dom again. Welcome, DJ. Thank you so much. Happy to be here. This has been really fun, and glad to do this with XJ, my guy. And one of these days we will win during a KFS watch party. These next two have to be must win to avoid play-in flirtation in the last 10 games. So alluding to the fact that a couple more losses, then we're worried about whether or not the team's going to have to win a play-in game to get into the official playoff bracket. So yeah, let me ask you, I'll pose it to you. Is this Laker game tomorrow a must-win game?
I would not. I stay away from the must-win kind of monikers on any specific game. I think it's a very important game. I think that the Lakers have been playing pretty well as well. So it's going to be a tough game. I think the Knicks are coming off of back-to-back. Given that we're seeing tired legs and a lot coming off of that Celtics game following that Heat game, I wouldn't want to call it a must-win because I don't think they're going to be favorited in that game, and I think it's going to be a tough game to win regardless. Despite the fact that they're staying in LA, it's not like they're traveling. But at the same time, I think it's going to be difficult. I wouldn't label it a must-win. I'm looking at the standings right now. The Knicks are in 6th. 39-30. They are in a virtual tie with the Nets for 5th. So it's just, percentage based. The Heat are, 2.5 games back of the Knicks, 36-32. So they have a little bit of a cushion. I don't think it's a must win. I think getting out of this West Coast trip with, a win or two is sufficient, and then just do well when they come back on the East Coast. So I think, to me, I don't think tomorrow's a must win, but I think it's very important. I think this is something to be concerned about.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And you mentioned the Lakers playing a little bit better. The trade they made has really injected a lot of life into this roster, even without LeBron. Vanderbilt is all over the court. So
Vanderbilt's insane right now.
If Julius Randle, probably not the guy you want to see tomorrow after today's game, just in terms of the energy and the physicality and the
absolutely effort. Yeah, it's such a good point. Yeah, I think tomorrow might be tough, unfortunately, but hopefully we can pull it out. I don't think they need to win it, but I think after that, that's when they'll start to become more must-win games. I think Miami, I don't think is going to surge that much. So we'll see coming up. What else do we got? Duran visual variant, never going to happen, but Randle needs some load management. This is to the big question philosophically that we've been talking about a lot of this post game. I mean, it's really interesting that coming out of this game, Randle with such a tough game, his closing line being 5 of 24, 3 of 10 from 3, a -8 on the game. I think this is just the big theme coming out of this game, is that Randle's tired. I think we all agree. I'm curious to see if he says it, publicly in any interviews or post-game interviews. But yeah, the never going to happen part is the big question to me. Could it happen? Is this something that Randle will say, you know what, I could use a game, that's going to benefit the team in the long run? I don't think Tibbs would say, no, you got to get out there. It doesn't matter. I think that Tibbs would be open to it. I just think it's going to come down to Randle either acknowledging that that's something that he needs, and, taking a game. The fact is the Knicks have a bunch of time coming up where they're going to have days off. Hopefully they're not doing hard practices during that time. They're recovering. JB's getting some recovery time. I would love to see Randle take some load management, but I don't know that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I just will get this tweet. Want to quote this one. So Fred Katz had Randle on the officiating. You mentioned it multiple times, how he was clearly not happy with how the game was officiated.
Yeah.
So when Randle was asked about it, his quote is, "All you got to do is watch the game." When asked about the refs having a no blood, no foul approach, he said, quote, and I guess can I curse on?
Yeah. Say what you got to say.
Okay. Quote, "Oh, there was fucking blood," end quote. So that's from the Fred Katz Twitter account. So Julius clearly suggesting that he was, knocked around a little bit and wasn't given the benefit of some calls. So maybe that is more in line with the idea that maybe we give him a pass on a game that quite possibly wasn't officiated in a way that was fair or even.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair point. And I also think, like I said earlier, I think Julius had a right and was valid in his frustration with the refs. There were a bunch of times when I saw he got fouled, he got pushed, a ton of Morris kind of doing shady stuff, but other guys were doing it as well. It seemed like that was just like a Ty Lue, like, hey, we're going to rough up Randle. He's tired. He'll get frustrated. And it kind of worked, unfortunately. So
to your point, Ty Lue after the game, Marcus being physical with him being Julius, kind of got him frustrated. So there you go. That's a head coach of the opposing team confirming exactly what you're saying. So there you go.
Yeah. So, and you could just kind of see that was a theme during the game. They just were like Ty Lue said, that was just something they were trying to do. And it worked. And we're going to probably see it tomorrow again with Vandy, like you mentioned, DJ. Mm-hmm. And so like, I just, I really need Randle to recover, and not just from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. And to me, that's the biggest part of the load management. It's not just the physical toll on his body, but it's the mental break of like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to chill. I'm going to take deep breaths. I'm going to get my autonomic nervous system back to a good homeostasis so I can, perform at a high level, and just like take that second to recuperate. So I would like to see it. Like Duran said, maybe never going to see it, but I wouldn't be shocked if we do.
What nervous system is this again? I didn't know.
It's the autonomic
into a biology
school. I have a psychology background, so
okay, there you go.
I just threw that in there. But
homeostasis, I know that's like balance, right? That's keeping things in order. That I got.
Yeah. No, appreciate it.
All right, David Crockett. I'm not out on RJ. No, neither are we, by the way. But I think he got too big last summer, no change of direction, turns like a cruise ship. Wow.
It's like a cruise
coming
ship.
in hot,
It's
David
vicious.
Crockett on RJ. Wow. Got to focus on flexibility this summer. So this is I know this is going to get into the weeds a little bit, but RJ coming out of, and we had talked about some of his, coming out of Duke, his lack of high end athleticism, but his flexibility seemed like something that was not a high level skill. And if you notice there are some drives where he'll get really upright. And when you're upright, you're not lowering your shoulder lower than the chest of your defender. It can get really, it's much easier to cut that lane off and get into him and force a bad shot. Totally. And when he can get low, bend at the hips, get his shoulders lower than the defenders, he's much more impactful. So I actually do think there's something to be said here regarding the flexibility, because it's a big thing. And I think Obi has improved his a lot since coming out of Dayton, because we talked about how it was talked about how his lack of flexibility was going to be a detriment in the NBA. Absolutely. I think overall he's improved that. In terms of RJ's weight, I'm not. I would hate to suggest that he is too big or too small. I really don't know in terms of his. He seems like he's in fine shape, to be honest. And he plays a lot of minutes.
He looks good to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that's the issue, but I do think the flexibility thing is something to be wary of. I think it's a legitimate concern and something that is improvable. Even as a 23, 24-year-old, I think it's something that he can get better at. So maybe he will improve on it.
DJ, have you talked about this, like the flexibility issue and kind of getting your center of gravity lower than the offensive player in like one of your film breakdowns or anything like that recently?
On the defensive end?
On the defensive end, yes. Yeah.
Not really. So I've done it with on offense, specifically regarding RJ, because it's so night and day regarding his impact when he can get low and bend at the hips and get past a defender. I'll make a note of that, because I think it is something that maybe is a detriment for him on the defensive end as well, especially with that changing of angles where guys are cutting and he's got to quickly move in a direction that he's not projecting. So certainly something to investigate. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because like I feel like I've heard about this recently, and I didn't know if it was something I watched that you did one of your breakdowns, but then in my own like pickup basketball games, defensively, I tried it. I was like, let me get really low, let me get on the balls on my feet, and let me get lower than the offensive player. And I find that I'm much better able to stay in front of guys when I'm a lot lower.
Grimes is great at it.
Grimes is great at it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Quickly, obviously, but those two, if you just watch them sit into a stance, it is phenomenal. And RJ is just inconsistent at that. And it might be a product of him needing to really mentally get himself to do it to a point where it's not as instinctual as maybe a guy like Grimes or Quickly.
Absolutely.
So, he can, when he has a lapse, it really is apparent, because when he's upright, his athleticism is really,
it's like too much to think about, right? It's like too much to think about at once. And when you're playing these high level guys, you're guarding Paul freaking George in the NBA. Like, you're not really going to have time to be like processing really slowly and thinking about what you need to do. You just got to play on instinct. And I think you're totally right. He does get upright a ton. So I think this is a great comment. I'm not sure about the weight. I do hear people say RJ's overweight right now. I'm not sure. Maybe it's he's been lifting weights like how Mitch did the previous year and kind of needed to scale back and get slim and flexible. So maybe it's some of that. I don't know enough to say, but yeah, I totally agree on the flexibility thing. I do see some issues there. So appreciate it, David Crockett.
Great comment. Love that.
Yeah. Dom Cappuccini back again. Dom, thanks so much, man. You're really holding us down. I can say on behalf of DJ, we really appreciate it. And this has been a great post game so far. So thanks so much, Dom. I am all for PG-13 or the Claw to come here and pair up with JB and JR. I can't wish for enough. Next level, Dom. I mean, I don't see the mix between Kawhi and Tibbs really necessarily working that well. Too much of a clash of philosophies, perhaps. As far as a player, I couldn't be higher on Kawhi. I think the guy is just, when he's healthy and he's locked in, there's maybe 4 players better than him in the NBA, like consistently. Maybe.
Yeah, at his best. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. I mean, he basically, the way he went toe-to-toe with Luka a couple of years ago, I think it was the bubble playoffs, where he was just the best player on the court, and he still has that in him. Yeah, he still has it in him. And obviously, having the assets to get 2 stars is probably not in the cards, but the Knicks do need another guy. It might not be the time or the place to investigate that fully, but this team obviously has a lower ceiling than you want in terms of championship aspirations. So figuring out how to get that 1A superstar is something I know the organization is trying to process and figure out.
And I totally agree. And I think that on the Paul George thing, a lot of people don't. I've heard a lot of people not feel like Paul George is enough of that 1A guy. I think Paul George with JB and Randle, I think that could work for a title contender, depending on what the other parts are around them. I don't think they're going to be a favorite or anything like that, but I think Paul George is really, really good. And I think he's become underrated. I don't remember what season it was, maybe a couple years back. Paul George was playing at like an MVP level, and then I think he got hurt or something.
I think it was that the second Oklahoma City year.
Yeah,
where
he was
awesome.
Dominant, and his defense was excellent as well. So, not that he's going to play on at that peak Paul George level, but I think he still has several really high level years ahead of him. And I think, I like this team, this Knicks team being like a strength, being the fact that they have so many guys. They're so deep, 3 through 9. I would argue the deepest team in the NBA 3 through 9 with how Hartenstein has been playing and how we know Obi Toppin can play. A little bit concerned the fact that Paul George is 32, Kawhi 31 with a ton of miles on his body. So, I don't think it's a shoo-in, but yeah, just philosophically on a basketball sense, I think those guys getting it, the fact that we know they can get into the paint and kind of get any shot they want within the short mid-range plays right into the Knicks philosophy. So those guys would work really great.
Yeah, and we talked about how just needing a wing that could obviously be a defensive impact on the other end, but also, Brunson's size is a limiting factor at times on the offensive end. But not to say that this is not a criticism of him. It's just the reality of things. The thing the Knicks need the most is a wing of wing size guy, like 6'7" plus that could do things on both ends of the court. It's the ultimate piece, but also the most valuable piece in the league. So getting it is obviously the challenge.
It's going to cost you.
Yeah, it's going to cost you a lot.
Appreciate it, Dom. Thanks so much again.
HamDM again, thank you again for the generous contribution. On the Cam comments, I agree with you guys, but as a fan, I feel like Randle is not held accountable at times. Yes, he's been great, but what do you think happens behind closed doors? Interesting, because this really became to a head last year where it seemed like Randle wasn't being held accountable, even though he wasn't giving proper effort on the defensive end. His shot selection was at times embarrassingly bad. To his credit, he's completely flipped the switch on that in terms of the shots he's taking for the most part. But I think as a head coach, and this is where I think Tibbs gets properly criticized, but also I think this is something that I think we aren't, as fans on the outside looking in or as analysts and seeing this from afar, aren't giving him enough credit for, because I think Randle is and I'm trying to put my words correctly, I think he's just a challenging star to manage, in the sense that he is, the Knicks are requiring a lot from him. We've talked about how mentally, especially when Brunson isn't around, things can get really hairy for him. So I think if you're the head coach, you may worry, yes, if I treat Julius Randle like I'm going to treat Obi Toppin, or I'm going to treat RJ Barrett at times, will I lose him? And Thibodeau knows that if he loses Julius Randle, the season is, he can't win. You can't lose the season. So I think we have to look at it in the sense that Julius is so important to this team. And I think that there is some kid glove situation happening, but I don't know. And honestly, I don't know, because I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if Tibbs has another option here, because I think if he goes and he treats Randle like he does every other player on the team,
that's a good point.
I don't know if that's going to work out into his favor, to be honest.
I was just going to say, G, that's such a good point. And it's funny because I think I kind of both agree with you and with Hamdi, as I waver on it. I think that you made incredible points. You recently had a podcast with your introduction to KFS, which was excellent. I listened to the whole thing. The analysis was everything I would expect from you. And I loved it. On my introduction to KFS podcast, something that Macri and I talked about was like, what do those film sessions look like when Julius Randle is like not closing out on the three, guys that are wide open from three, or just like giving really poor defensive effort? Like, what do those film sessions look like? Is like, what are they saying to him? Like the film has to come up. Right. And what do they say? Do they say, do they look the other way? They say, hey, Julius, like, we know you'll get it next time. Right. Like, I don't know what they say, but his effort has improved tremendously more recently, in lockstep with his performance on the offensive end has been excellent all season. His defensive effort and performance was not great and has come along of late. Besides these last 3 games, when I think he's just been more tired. And so it's really hard to say. It's hard to hold him accountable for fatigue when, the coach is like, yeah, we want you out there for 36 minutes. He's like, I want to be out there. So he almost has to get some grace for that. And then the factor that you mentioned, DJ, of like, you can only be so hard on a guy who has, some shaky mental, and there's nothing to be ashamed of about that.
He's been open about it, right?
He's been open about that. Yeah. And so, and it totally makes sense to say, hey, we got to treat him a little bit differently because we can't lose him. He's too important to the team. He's just too important. You just can't do it.
And they're asking a lot of him. So you can look at it in the sense that if you're Quentin Grimes, as an example, yeah, he's asked to guard for the most part, the best offensive player on the other team. But, the load that he has to carry on a physical level is just different than Julius. It is. Yeah. So I would think that players like Grimes and Quickly and some of these guys intellectually understand that Julius is so important to this team. I think they have, obviously they want to win games, and they probably know and have accepted the fact that as long as he's playing well, then it's okay. Now, the question is, if Julius isn't playing well, then the whispers start to creep up a little bit, and then things can get a little, which was last year basically. So that's where it can get a little dicey. But right now, with these games, last few games aside, Julius has had a really good year. So I don't necessarily think Tibbs is handling him in a way that is detrimental to the overall ecosystem of this roster.
Yeah, I agree with that, and thanks so much, Hamdi, for the comment. I think it's a tough balance, and I think they definitely have to find a balance. I don't think it's just let Julius do whatever he wants at all. I think he has to be held accountable, but I think it's also to balance it with his mental and some of the things we talked about. So appreciate it, Hamdi. Thanks so much for all the generous contributions. Hamdi again. Speaking of the guy, I know it's the past, but that Hornets game, DJ. Do you want to take that, DJ?
I mean, when I talked with Macri about it, it wasn't necessarily an X's and O's thing. It was more that going on to this 4-game swing. All right. So first of all, when I was watching the game, I kept thinking, oh, wow, I think Tibbs is going to love this. They're going to sneak out a win, and he's going to have all this amazing footage and game tape to really hammer the team on and like use it as
terrible. But
right.
And then, the dub.
Right. That's right. And then they end up losing the game. And then I'm like, all right, they're due for a rough one. And then the next day I'm like, but it would have been amazing to bank that win before this 4-game swing, which I had thought there's going to be some challenges. So yeah, the Hornets game was a tough one. And again, you give them a pass coming off the Boston game, but a game you just wanted to get in the win column before this win streak. And it's clear, just looking at the standings, that things are bunched up and they're going to continue to be bunched up. So you need as many of these wins as you can get, and just hope that they can come out tomorrow, put a good effort out, get a win. And then I think I have good confidence against, I think they match up pretty well against the Blazers to wrap up the swing. So yeah, looking forward to this game tomorrow for sure.
I had the same exact takeaway as you, DJ. It was almost like that. I know we won that tight Miami game, a tight Celtics game, and it's like most likely you're going to lose one of those games in most cases, but they got away with both. So it's almost like they could afford to drop this Hornets game, but it's like, no, we kind of needed that to get where we want to get, like to really lock up a playoff spot and avoid the play-in, and even really with the eye on the 5th seed, because I would so much rather play Cleveland than Philly, honestly, like in the first round of the playoffs. So I think that was a big loss, and I think we might end up looking back at that later in the season as being like a really, really substantial loss, because with the West Coast swing, I think the other game that's going to be like that is the Portland game, and I'm really looking forward to them trying to keep Dame in check to kind of get a dub there. But great point, Hamdi. Thanks so much again.
Thank you again. Yes. So generous. Him DM again. I mean, I appreciate you. Thank you. RJ is not fat. He's chubby. Listen,
we're not fat shaming RJ.
Listen, RJ Barrett is probably in the 99.9% centile in terms of body fat for the average human in this world. So believe me, I'm not in any position as to fat shame RJ Barrett. Believe me, I'm not going there.
I feel like so many NBA players are like, you look at them and you're like, man, that guy's kind of big. Like he's got like, even like Jokic is a guy like that, or even like Zach Randolph in his prime. It's like, man, that guy's big. But then when you see them like in person, if you go to a game live and you're like, that guy is ripped. Like what? I mean, even Zion, like, I don't know. These guys are all in tremendous shape, but I get what you're saying, Hamdi. It's like, maybe he needs to slim down. He just needs to get quicker. I think the point is he needs to get quicker. However, he needs to do that through flexibility, through losing weight, through losing muscle mass. Maybe he's too bulky. He's just getting, lifting too many weights. He needs to get quicker. And that's kind of the underscoring the point.
Yeah. And just to wrap that up, I don't think RJ uses or leverages his strength as much as I would hope.
Great point.
So the question is, all right, you've built your body to be able to be a power driver, but are you really leveraging that on a consistent basis? Because if you're not, because I watch like Jimmy Butler play and he is always dipping his shoulder and he's putting a hole into your chest time after time again. And I'm not expecting RJ to be Jimmy Butler, but I'm saying if you're not going to be that guy, then maybe the question is slimming down, adding a little bit more explosiveness the way to go if you're not going to be a physical, put your shoulder into a guy and drive him out of the paint driver, which he hasn't shown, at least to this point, that he is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think even a guy like Josh Hart is able to really leverage his strength as much as possible. I mean, he's undersized. Josh Hart, I would not guess, just like watching them play on the court, that Josh Hart is like shorter than RJ Barrett.
Right.
He just plays so big and so strong and aggressively. And he's in transition, like that guy's a bowling ball. You just can't stop him. He's going to get to the rim. He finishes over guys. He doesn't have, I don't think he has the best burst or explosiveness or athleticism, but he also does a great job of leveraging his strength, his momentum. So there's ways you can get around it no matter what your body composition is, or, whether you're a stronger guy who's a little bit slower, whether you're a quick guy who's a little bit slimmer, there are ways you can compensate and like play to your strengths and mitigate your weaknesses with regard to body composition and athleticism. And I think RJ just needs to figure out what works for him and be really consistent with it, to your point, DJ.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for the most part, he does a pretty decent job, but he just needs to enhance it a little bit.
Yeah. What do we got? I think this is the last one. Robert W. Cross, Mr. #53 wins himself. The prophet, Robert Cross. Tibbs Randle lost this game. They enable each other. This is a very strong comment coming in at the end here. RJ and greater than Obi, I'm not sure if I'm reading that right, are the X factors for NYK in the playoffs. #RIP 53 wins. So sad to get that hashtag, but there's always next year. To your first point, Tibbs and Randle lost this game. They enable each other. I see where you're coming from. I think Randle played like DJ, you mentioned, Obi actually only ended with like 13 minutes or something, which is kind of crazy to think about how well he's playing in the first half. And the fact that Randle needed a breather, I think. So I think there is some culpability on Tibbs for just how much Randle played when A, he didn't have it, B, he needed a breather, C, you had Obi Toppin who's playing really well, and that second unit was playing really well. So I think there's something there, but at the same time, I think they would have lost this game regardless. I think that those two guys on the Clippers end are just so good. And I think that the Knicks had a very small margin for error. I don't know that things would have changed that much if Randle sat and have another like 5 extra minutes.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think the calculus for Tibbs is like, all right, I have no Brunson. I need as many shot makers as possible. And I'm just, the game is if Julius makes shots, we're going to have a chance to win. If he misses them, we're going to lose. And I just don't think that as well as Obi played, I don't know if he is I know he's not the type of shot maker they would ultimately need to go toe to toe against PG and Kawhi, like you mentioned. So it's just a tough decision. I would have liked to see Obi play a little bit more. So I agree. I think he played really well when he was out there, but it's a game where you needed Julius to just make a few more shots. Cause if he makes 8 shots instead of 5, where's this team's got a fighting chance with like 2 minutes left. I mean, that's like where the margin was in before they got out of hand towards the end of the fourth quarter. So I think Tibbs, I can't kill him necessarily on that, because without Brunson, where are the shots coming from in the end?
Yep. And I totally get that philosophy from Tibbs. At the same time, I'm one of the guys who thinks that they could run a lot more of the type of offense that they were running with the second unit, with Hartenstein helping to create, with running pick and rolls with quickly, a lot of more movement, a lot more kind of just ball movement and player movement. I think they can do it. I know they don't want to lean on that too much, because they don't want to turn the ball over. They want to just focus on what their strengths are: getting to the rim, getting to the floater range, getting offensive rebounds, winning the possession battle. So I know they want to focus on their strengths. So I get the balance. I would have liked to see Obi play more than 13 minutes in a game where, like, probably his best game in the last month or two. But at the same time, I think they probably would have lost this game anyway.
I tend to agree.
I think we got a couple more. Justin, is that right? A couple more that just came in, super chats. There we go.
All right, David Crockett, thank you again for supporting us here. Really appreciate that. And let me clarify on, okay, so this is alluding to his previous super chat. Let me clarify on RJ got too big. I meant yoked, so jacked. Big, yeah, there you go. Show those guns, X-Jack.
I don't got them, but
he's jacked across the chest and shoulders, lost too much flexibility to leverage strength. I mean, it's at the key. There's a lot going on here in terms of things that might be out of my purview, but I think it's fair. I think you can certainly get too big, and we've seen guys, get really big in the upper body, and where you gain in some areas, you're going to lose in some. So it makes sense that if you're going to try to get bigger, you're going to lose some quickness, and in the NBA, when things are, everything is on the margins in terms of, the edge you get and the space you're creating and your ability to finish, that if you're just a little bit less explosive, it could be an issue. So I think there is probably something here. I definitely think the flexibility is a problem. And if you're saying the flexibility is a product of being too big and too yoked, too jacked, I think it's fair. And I think it's something RJ's probably he's going to have to figure this out in the offseason, but something to be considered.
Yeah. My quick note on that is, I know, David, I didn't think that you were fat shaming RJ by any means. I think that we've seen a few Knicks go this route, right? Like Mitch really bulked up that one season. Like I think it was last year. We saw that happen. IQ, I saw a ton of like IQ workout videos in the summer. Like I saw so much IQ just like with his shirt off. I didn't expect that, but we've seen guys go this route where they kind of get bigger. I think it helps some guys and it doesn't help other guys. And so maybe they have to do it and figure out what works for them. So,
quickly, I think it's been a value add.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think he still needs a little bit more strength because, as I mentioned, some of those power, big physical guards can give him a little bit of trouble.
Yep.
But for RJ, I think it's a fair to question it. And we'll see how in this offseason what he's going to look like, because if he finishes the season not necessarily playing the way that he feels, I know how he thinks of himself. If he's not that guy, then there's certainly big questions that he needs to ask himself.
Yep. Totally agree. Thanks so much, David. Appreciate it. Hamdi M again. Hamdi, you're the MVP of this post game. That's for sure. My wife is a therapist. Wow. Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, I'm deep into psychology, so I like where this question's going already. I'm so fascinated by the mental aspect of sports. Do you think NBA teams invest in mental health? This is should be a podcast on its own, Hamdi. I think that they do to an extent. I don't know the specific details about what the investment looks like. I don't know, if every team has mental health practitioners on staff, or to what extent, teams are focused on, like I mentioned earlier with DJ, the regulating the autonomic nervous system, right? Things that bring down the stress level on the body so that you're able to perform physically and mentally, given the stress toll, the pressure that's on a lot of these guys in the game and in their off court life as well, given, that they have businesses and they have like a lot of people who depend on them and who rely on them. And there's just so much going on, obligations, endorsements that they're doing. Like they're stretched very, very thin. So I'm curious as well, like how much teams are investing into the mental health of players. I mean, I think to me, something I always see, and that's important, I think, is that I'm seeing like Julius with a lot of his meditation pre-games and talking about mental health and talking about, as long as I have my mental right, I'm solid, so I think there's a emphasis on it from the player perspective. I know there's a ton of advancements as far as like physical health and monitoring. And I think Paul George said on the JJ Redick podcast recently that all the players on the Clippers have like a chip, or they have like, whether it's a smartwatch or something that they wear to monitor like heart rate variability, and like, all of those factors from a physical health standpoint. So I wonder if they're doing the same thing from the mental health standpoint. And if they're not, I think that is a place that's going to explode in upcoming times, because I think that has a really substantial and disproportionate impact on players' ability to perform on the court. So I think it's a great question.
I agree with you. And it's just become something that I would say over the last several seasons, players are much more open in terms of their ability to communicate this as a real thing that they have to contend with. And if you're a team and you're trying to build a product, obviously that is going to win ball games, having your players mentally in the right frame of mind is a paramount. And I think if you just look at this as like a cold hard, like money thing, there's no salary cap in terms of what you are able to invest in some of these ancillary pieces. So if you're a team like the Knicks, I imagine they are investing into this.
Totally.
Again, because it's not a salary cap thing, we won't necessarily know how much money they are allocating into this area, but it's a big thing. And it's like the mental health. You had mentioned the fact that all the Clippers have chips that monitor heart rate and their sleep patterns. And sleep itself has become like such a huge thing that we're talking about, because it ties into your mental health and your ability to withstand stress levels that are elevated, and your cortisol and all those things. So I agree 100%. And I do think teams are obviously investing in it. Now, you could get a situation where you have one team investing like a massive amount, and then you have another team on the bottom end not really investing so much. So maybe there is ways to take advantage of that, because I think it could really benefit your players on just a human level. And if they're right as people, then they're going to be right basketball players. So something that is a big thing. And I'm glad that Hamdian brought it up.
Yeah, such a great point, DJ. I have more I could say on it, but I think we should reserve this maybe for an off-season podcast.
Yeah, make a note, because it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Thanks so much again, Hamdi. Appreciate it. I think that's you, DJ.
All right. True Statement. So this is the first one from True Statement. So thank you so much for sticking with us and supporting us on this Saturday. If there's no true ball handler with the second unit, why not go Fournier or McBride for more scoring? Sorry if already addressed. So we did talk about the impact the second unit has, and they really, in the second quarter, they got the Knicks back in the game. They pushed the pace. It was a carryover actually from the Sacramento game. Once Brunson went out, it was really a priority for the Knicks to push the pace. And they have guys like Josh Hart, like quickly when he's playing with that unit, like Obi, that could really get out and finish and get some easy baskets off makes or misses. I am not a proponent of going to McBride for the scoring aspect. Now he does have,
I think you said Fournier over McBride for more
Fournier,
scoring.
I apologize. You're right.
Yeah.
Fournier over McBride for more scoring. Yeah. I've thought of that. And I think that it's a button that is there to push. And I think Fournier is a guy that is a professional, that he's going to be ready to get in there. And I think it would add a little bit more diversity to an offense, because Fournier does have ability to do things as a shooter that no other Knick has, in terms of his movement ability, his ability to space deep out. He can even run a second side pick and roll. There's certain things you can do with him. Again, you're going to give up a lot on the defensive end, but it's a button that might be one that Tibbs should push. I think I probably would go, if you had to, push me, I'd probably go Fournier over McBride, because I don't, as much as I love Deuce on the defensive end, and I think he's a really good connector, had a nice transition pass in this game for a finish. He's not giving you anything on the offensive end, and without
Too
Brunson,
tentative. Yeah.
very tentative. And without Brunson, you just need to extract as much offense out of these units as possible. So fair to question it. And yeah, I think it's something I would think about. And, Tibbs has made decisions so far this year that have maybe surprised us. So maybe he does give Fournier a look in one of these next couple of games before they head back home.
Yeah, true statement. I mean, I think it's a great point. I think in this game especially, they needed offense. I don't know what they ended out from 3. I know it was not good at all.
Well, they shot 36% overall, which is a really, that is a bad number. So I'll pull up the.
I see it right now. 7 of 31 from 3, 23% from 3. Yeah. They definitely, I think that makes a lot of sense to go Fournier over McBride in this game. McBride played like 6 minutes, so I don't know if it would have been a huge difference in the overall outcome of the game, but I think it's totally a valid point.
I agree.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I think that is all. Thank you all so much for the super chats. Like, this was really tremendous. Such a great post game. Big shout out to associate producer Justin Palmer, APJP. Thanks so much for holding us down and making this all possible for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, DJ, I had so much fun doing this with you. Anything you want to say?
Just a blast. Wish we had a win to talk about, but to get on here and kind of banter with you a little bit has been amazing. And then obviously interacting with all the Knicks Film School community was an absolute blast. So thank you for supporting us, and I hope to do it again soon.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for all the super chats, all the generous donations, and all of your support just being here, especially on a day when we had a KFS live watch party. So for people who came through either after that watch party or who didn't get to make an appearance, we really appreciated having you. And yeah, thanks so much. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's go Knicks. Appreciate it.